Hello everyone. Let's talk on procrastination one-on-one. So what are the common triggers and effective coping techniques? My name is Piotr Nabielec. I'm the founder of Four-Step Productivity. And today, let's just talk about the practical aspects of procrastination. So what I want to cover today is we'll do brief introduction to a few foundational let's say aspects of procrastination and productivity in general. That will be foundation blocks for the rest. That will be 8 sources and solutions that I gathered over the last years while working with people on productivity. And then at the end, I would like to share what you can do. So there's like a call to action. Okay, you finished. You probably isolate these two, maybe 1 or 2 issues that for you, this 20% that give you 80% results. So maybe you isolate 1 or 2 that say, okay, this is for me. And then so what you can do specifically to just move forward. And then Q&A at the end. So Tomasz, I'm ready to learn how to procrastinate more efficiently. Yeah. So introduction, a few basic concepts, maybe a little bit more background about what productivity I believe in, because there are many people sharing knowledge about it. And let's talk about procrastination. What is it? I found a definition that I like, that it's the act of delaying or postponing tasks that need to be accomplished. So there is something that needs to be done, that we need to do it, and there is some tension inside us that prevents us from doing it. So this is like internal fight. And this is really important to mention in the very beginning, because from the logical point of view, procrastination makes no sense. Okay, you have a task in front of you, there's something, and you know it needs to be done, and that's it, your job. And then suddenly there is some tension and you cannot move forward. So this is really strange. And this comes back to a question maybe that's not pretty, let's say, obvious right now, but how do you handle tension and discomfort in general? So tension and discomfort may come from a task that's in front of you, or you may have a tension or discomfort in your relationship, or maybe when it comes to your body. And there are various strategies, and I'll just park it here because we'll use it later. So one of the techniques to deal with the tension and discomfort is avoidance. Okay, I'm trying not to see it. I'm trying to do everything to just have it out of my radar. So that's one technique. Okay, the other is quick comfort. That's sometimes in a relationship you can quickly see it. There's a tension, and I want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. Sometimes I do some stuff to just be okay again very quickly. Maybe I feel this tension and discomfort. I just try not to see it, and I just push myself through, because that's what my parents taught me, that I just need to push harder. Or maybe you blame, you look that it's the government, or it's your partner or your parents. And maybe you are curious. Okay, what's this? Where's this tension? Where do I feel it in my body? Where is it coming from? Do I know this type of tension? And so there will be drastically different strategies to cope with tension and discomfort. And it is crucial also to look from that perspective, because procrastination is just a flavor of it. So when people share their stories about procrastination, there's always almost the same thing, which is a sense of guilt and anxiety. And it's because it's an automatic result of breaking agreements with yourself. This is the painful part. We all know it. We all procrastinate on something to some extent in some periods of our life. So there are no bad people and good people. But it hurts this self-trust. I'll talk about it in a minute, and I'll begin with that actually. And I would like to propose you a little bit a different view. And before I jump into these 8 sources and 8 techniques, what you can do is let's think about procrastination as your friend. Okay, you have that friend who's been telling you the truth, but sometimes you don't want to see it. But the moment you see it, you say, "Oh, right, you were right for quite a long time." And so many people perceive procrastination as an enemy, like something is living in you, preventing you from doing the good stuff. And then it's like it goes everywhere with you. You can't get rid of it. And this is like the constant fight, like you trying to, in this big tension, fight this part of you that's not giving you comfort. And I'd like to change this perspective a bit for the next 40 minutes. Imagine that you have a friend inside you protecting you from something. And I will propose these 8 somethings. And I hope you'll find at least one of those that say, okay, this is the one I would like to work on right now. But if you treat procrastination as your enemy to fight back or combat or do something like that, maybe if you change perspective to more empathy as your friend who's trying to protect you against something, that completely changes the dynamics, and that's what we need. And before I jump into the content, of course, I asked ChatGPT about like what you can share the techniques about procrastination. It tells me like the common sense. So what are the recommendations of ChatGPT for procrastination? I just cut a piece of the text so you're not distracted too much. First thing, break down tasks into smaller manageable steps. Number 2, set specific and achievable goals. Number 3, create a schedule or a to-do list. 4, eliminate distractions. Find accountability partner, and practice self-compassion. These were the 6 recommendations given by ChatGPT, and these are actually a very good start. I'd like to put them today in a context, and especially I'll begin with number 6, because in my practice, in my experience, that's one of the most important to begin with. So before we jump in, a few words about me and the productivity I believe in. And let's move on to, let's say, the juice. So the productivity, as I define it, and the definition I found that's the most relevant and most inspiring, is that it's value divided by effort. You can meditate on that for months, because if you want to be more productive, it means you want to increase the value of the effort you put in it. The effort can be time, can be money, can be energy. Or you're happy with the value, you want to lower the effort. So we want to play with these 2 values. And value can mean different things to different people. So if I'm 75 years old and I look back in my life, I completely, maybe in a different perspective, from a different perspective, I perceive what had value in my life. Or today, what had value in my life, like for the next hour, is one thing. And what I perceive as a value in my life for the next 10 years, maybe completely different thing, or maybe they are perfectly aligned. So that will be the goal. So that's the productivity I believe in. It relates to so many things, from time management, but also it can be in relationships or life in general. So who am I to talk about procrastination? My background is development. I was a software engineer and manager for more than 10 years. My love was like embedded electronics and software design, and then moved to other layers. And I still have that brain that loves algorithms, that love clarity and structure. And I've been dealing with time management for over 10 years professionally. But still, I love that clear algorithms that work, and debugging what doesn't work. It's still very deep in me. And I spent last, let's say, 8 to 10 years on time management trainings. There were in classroom, especially before COVID. And then I had courses online, like Productivity Step by Step, which was on Polish 30-day habit formation course. And I did a course on Udemy, Practical Time Management, that was in English and actually inspired me to change what I do from Polish to English. That's why we have that webinar today. And so what I wanted to share with you is this practical hints over this last 10 years that I gathered from people while listening their stories. And it's also important for me to emphasize that okay, I have engineering background, I love algorithms, but I love my intuitional part, let's say, more into feeling. I love being scared sometimes. This is like me paragliding. I have a license, but I haven't been flying for the last, let's say, 4 years. But this is this moment that something makes no, let's say, logical sense. I love this freedom of meeting with friends and being on, let's say, next to a lake and play music. This is actually me playing music on a slide. That's a big part of my life that's more into intuition and how I feel. And this is the productivity I believe in, that balances this logical and this more feeling part to it. Also, I love movement. And so this is the productivity I believe in. Let's stop there. And before I go into these 8 techniques, a brief introduction of the 4-step productivity, because I'll be mentioning, okay, this is a typical step 3 problem, so you know what I'm talking about if you're new to that. So, 4-step. When dealing with productivity and people and these thousands of techniques, there's a lot of mess. So it became obvious after a few years that they form some kind of steps when people want to deal with productivity. Step number 1 is you want to organize your day, your daily activities. And when you're good with that, you're ready to organize your weekly activities and short-term projects, some maybe a little bit more long-term. And when you're ready with that, we have step 3, which is more about strategy. Okay, where I go, what do I want, what are my next steps over the, let's say, the 3 months, a year, or maybe 2-3 years. And I would call it a strategy. And then step 4 is how to connect it to your passion, bigger vision. So we have plenty of books on step 1 and plenty of books on step 4. And these step 2 and 3 are these connectors that are usually missing in many productivity courses and books, because somehow you have to connect this bigger vision with your day-to-day activities. So what are the core skills to master? First, on step 1, this is task listed calendar, what I have to do today. Then if I know what I want to do, how do I focus and how do I fight with distractions? That's another issue. Another skill is managing your email and communication. It's a lot of source of distractions, but you also have a lot of open loops, relationships. It's another thing. And then daily planning in 5 minutes, that's another skill. On step 2, we have managing multiple projects and initiatives. So we're no longer in tasks. We're more thinking about areas of your life, like physical activity or relationships that you have in your life, or these 3, 4, 5, 7 projects that you're running. Then we have effective meetings and weekly planning. On step 3, we have your knowledge base, your second brain. Where do you store the information that you gathered on your projects, on the activities, so you can then bang, in 20 seconds, get whatever information you need. And long-term planning. And step 4 is just like thinking about and gathering various even tests that help you discover your talents, your passions, and connect it to the other steps. And this is important because when you think Pomodoro technique, for me, okay, that goes to step 1 and focus and distractions, if you heard about this technique. Or inbox 0 goes to email and communication, and so on. So when I mention step 1, that means your daily activities, your week. Then step 3 is more about strategy. And step 4 is about passion, talents, and bigger vision. And actually some people, and that would be the first question to you, which direction you prefer. Some people like organizing by step 1. So let's organize what I have in front of me and then move toward larger and larger perspective. And some people love to start with big dreams and then move down to, okay, so what do I do today to achieve my big dreams? So there are 2 types of people, usually have 2 different types of books. So when we have that, we're ready to talk about 8 sources and solutions. And if you have questions, comments, whatever, write on chat. I'll be checking it every few minutes and hope to comment on that. But in the end, I'll try to answer all questions you have. So number 1, guilt and shame, the killers of everything. didn't mentioned by ChatGPT or any other source. It's rarely even mentioned in the context of procrastination. For me, that's number one to mention, because if I don't mention that, everything else doesn't have much sense. If you struggle with this, that's the first thing to combat. This is especially important when you know how we humans learn. How humans learn. We have an experience. This is called Kolb cycle. So I have an experience, something happened, and then I have a reflection. Okay, what happened? Why it happened? Where did it come from? How do I feel about it? And stuff like that. And then I look for knowledge. Okay, what does it mean that this happened? And based on the reflection, I will look for different sources of knowledge, because I can think, if my reflection is I'm miserable, then I will seek the different knowledge that it happens every Friday. That's a completely different reflection that will push me to seek for different aspects of knowledge. And then based on that knowledge, I may maybe plan a simple experiment to check if that knowledge really works, and that gives me another experience. So this is a Kolb cycle, and this is crucial that we have that reflection part. In 21st century, this building block is like non-existent. Maybe you can go to Google, you can ask about specific aspect of anything, and you get a response. So this is like a question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And this way you gather isolated answers to isolated questions. But without this reflection part, you're not building your knowledge, your expertise, your mastery. And this is important, especially in the context of guilt and shame, because with guilt and shame, this link is completely broken. Because you have that experience, you feel shame, and that's actually one of the strongest feelings to avoid. So you don't reflect, you want to escape, you want to, that's so much pain that you want to avoid it at all costs. So with experiencing shame, you're not able to learn. So you don't learn, basically. You don't learn. And if you see people that constantly over and over do the same mistakes, and it seems like for you it's obvious, but they don't see it and then don't learn, I give, let's say 80+% that they experience a lot of shame, because shame protects you from seeing the issue, because it affects you so much. Shame gives you a downward spiral, which means it's so much pain that I want to avoid that I medicate myself with something. I can medicate myself with Instagram, I can medicate myself with alcohol or drugs, or I can medicate myself with being busy. That's a beautiful way to avoid what I feel. And so because I do it, I feel even more shame, and then I need to medicate more and more. So it's a downward spiral, a base for every addiction, basically. The problem with shame and guilt is that it affects your identity, your self-esteem. When I made a survey, some people wrote to me, I'm a huge procrastinator. Okay, so it's not I procrastinate. It's not something I do, but I am a huge procrastinator. And when it comes part of identity, it's really hard to fight with that, because it's who you are. How can you change who you are? You can change what you do. So that's a painful thing about shame, that it slowly change your identity to believe that's what you do is who you are. And I don't believe that. You can change what you do. You can change who you are to some extent, but you can change what you do if you change what you think. Another issue is trust, your trust to yourself and your trust to others and others' trust to you. And the only way to effectively combat shame is the group acceptance. It's basically reversing what usually happened over the course of your life, that someone rejected you because of something, and then you felt this shame. Now your nervous system is afraid that you'll be rejected again. And so the most efficient way to combat shame is through group acceptance. So if I'm alone, I can work on my anger, I can work on my sadness, I can cry, I can shout, I can, release a lot of emotions. But shame, requires you or me or a group that accepts a behavior or accepts me even if I have that behavior. So maybe a little bit of psychology, but this is really important, especially that if this is something you experience, the rest of the points doesn't really matter, because you will jump out of this procrastination mode and then this shame will suck you down as a downward spiral. So that's the first thing to combat. And if you see anonymous alcoholics and groups like that, what they do as a first thing, they sit in a circle and say, hey, I'm alcoholic. Maybe that's a part of their identity. They know that they will struggle with this through the rest of their lives. But there are more people like me. There's kind of acceptance that, okay, this is the problem that we're fighting. And this group acceptance gets shame out of the picture. Now I can work on the real problem. So, well, a really important point for me, because these two things are foundation for addictions. Guilt is short-lived. It's because what I did something, but shame is like becoming part of you. It's a foundation for addictions, and it kills all curiosity. So, really important point. I've seen so many people affected by procrastination that are ashamed of it. That they are ashamed of their doom scrolling, and they feel like this is like something wrong with them. And that will be the first thing to take care about. Kasia's asking, will I give access to the recording afterwards? Yes. Number 2, lack of energy. So let's talk about your internal battery. And imagine that you have a battery like your phone. If I now take my iPhone and I see current charge, I have actually 2 parameters. One is a current charge and the other is battery health. So let's think about, what would you say? You charge your phone overnight and the current charge is 100%. Is it good? Would you like to see it? And that's what many people also tell me. I had a really good night's sleep, so I'm charged. But what would you tell me if I now entered the settings on my phone and saw that the battery health is 30%? So suddenly you see that it's not 100%. It's 100% of 30%. And probably if you saw that number on your phone, that battery health is 30%, you probably want to exchange it for a new, probably today, because you see you're fully charged, but it's not actually being fully charged. Your health is 30%. And so I would say you have an energy level that's, let's say, step 1 energy level. So let's see your day, how well you slept. In Poland, where I am right now, it's like 6:25 p.m. And so you had your day, and maybe you're at 15% right now. Maybe you're in 80. That's a question you may ask yourself, because this will also greatly affect your procrastination levels. But that's step 1. And step 3, battery health, is a completely different story. So maybe you slept well today, but your longer term battery health, your internal battery health, is 30%. Maybe you didn't have vacation for quite a long time. Maybe you struggle in a relationship. Maybe there's some issue with your health in general. You say, I don't have time to fix it. But that's actually one of the most important thing, because if you have this internal friend of you who wants to protect you, and you have this task in front of you that you simply don't have energy, this friend will try to protect you and move you away from that task. So maybe if you deal with procrastination or someone close to you, maybe that's their energy levels. So these 2 first problems would be something about like you and your condition, or another person. And in my opinion, there's more than 50% of cases with procrastination are these 2 problems, these 2 first problems, and then maybe 2 more, and then let's talk about some fancy flavors of the others. So your battery level and something protecting you against using too much energy that you basically don't have. Maybe you even don't realize. And if you want to test that hypothesis, if you struggle personally with procrastination and you want to check an experiment if this is for you, or maybe this is your case, sometimes people are so busy that they don't even see how exhausted they are. You know, you caffeinate, you do stuff, you eat sugar, and you are on so much adrenaline rush that you don't even realize how empty you are. So if you think that maybe your case, you sleep well for 3 days, and after 3 days, if you feel this is still an issue, that means it's not a problem with your, let's say, internal battery. We can move on to the others. Too big. The third problem, things that are too big. I'll try to use a simple chart to discuss that. So imagine I have 2 tasks in front of me, the task A and task B. And task A that I show in blue here requires much more effort than B, the green one, which is a small one. Now when it comes to the reward, blue A is just a bit, and B is a huge one. Actually, dopamine is not a reward in itself, it's the anticipation of a reward. So your brain predicting what will be the reward. And if I expect a big reward, I have a huge spike of dopamine, and that's what counts in when you want to form habits. So now, being logical, we don't even have to be emotional here. Let's look at this diagram and see which task would you choose. This is a pure productivity question. So we have a reward, so this is value and the effort. So task B is just no-brainer, you just do it. And task A actually may be your project you want to work on. And task B is scrolling Instagram or news from Ukraine in my case. So what do we do? This is not an equal fight. I can push myself to work on A, but my brain knows it unconsciously that there's a huge effort and not that much reward. I have more immediate reward from scrolling, from, doing other stuff. So first thing we do, we deal with effort. And by dividing big tasks into smaller ones, we do this. We bring the effort to a level that at least it's comparable to something I'm trying to fight against. And maybe you want to a little bit raise the effort to, if let's say your problem is scrolling Facebook, let's say, on your phone, maybe you uninstall Facebook, and that raises the effort it requires to scroll. And that means you can always use the browser, you can always check the news, but it's a little bit harder. And at the same time, we need to make the things we want a little bit easier. So my recommendation would be, if you have anything larger than 1 to 2 hours, divide it into smaller pieces. I've seen countless of task lists from people that had a half an hour task next to a 2-month project. And they were thinking why they are procrastinating on this big project. It's because you don't see this next step that has an effort of, let's say, 30 to 60 minutes. If you see it, it immediately feels that you can do something about it. So divide into smaller steps. It's the best technique. I've seen so many beautiful stories where people had this project stuck for months, and then suddenly they broke it down to, okay, this is my next step, it takes an hour, and then the next step will take half an hour, and the next step will take 1.5 hours. And suddenly something unblocked, because the more you procrastinated something, the more the task is looking at you like, why are you not dealing with me? So this is this feeling of being stuck. And if you chunk it down even to a 10-minute task, but you feel, okay, I moved it. And suddenly you feel this great motivation to move it even more. So that's the number one. Divide the big things into smaller pieces. And then maybe let's talk about points number 5, 6, 7, and 8. Maybe raise the reward a bit to comparable. And then if you deal with step 3 and 4, maybe the reward will be even higher. Then you think it's just a waste of time to do other stuff because I have this project in front of me that I love, that gives me a lot of reward, and that is divided into small steps that I feel I can progress on it even if I'm in low energy. So this is like steps. If you're going upstairs, steps cannot be too small and they cannot be too big. If you walked up the stairs at any point of time, you know this feeling that if steps are too big, it's really uncomfortable to go up. You have to like climb, use a lot of energy. But if steps are too small, you're feeling like, okay, I could do better. So you have your task, let's say how big it is your personal choice and your personal preference. If you hurt your leg, I hurt my leg quite recently, and I had to make smaller steps and I had to walk more slowly, and that's okay. And so if I'm a procrastinator, let's say, healing procrastinator, maybe I need smaller steps. Or you struggle with ADHD, maybe then you chunk down your tasks to 20 minutes intervals. That's what you handle. That's okay. You divide it into the point that you feel you can move with it, and don't compare to others. All right, number 4. But these 3 first points, I would say this is 80% of the cases that I found. And then let's talk about different flavors. There'll be a recording, so you can always come back and see, okay, I dealt with the first 3, and then maybe you find that number 6 is for you this time. So too much, just a sip of water. That's a different problem from having too big tasks. It's like food, okay? You can have too big pieces on your plates, and also you can have too much food on your plate. Our mouth has a limited volume, so if the piece is too big, you just can't fit it. And I would say sometimes people have these tasks, big tasks, that just you cannot digest this thing. You have to cut it into smaller pieces. But what happens if you have too much on your plate? That's what even people say when they have too many tasks in their time. I have too much on my plate. You have too much on your plate, and then you feel bad. There's something. And then you medicate yourself, maybe with food. And in this case, I'm very busy. I feel bad about it. So I'm even more busy. And this causes, if like having too much on my real plate makes me obese, then there's something I would call task obesity. So because you are busy so much all the time, you don't even realize that you became task obese. So that's your new norm that you don't even know how to deal with. So this task obesity. How do you get out of that state? We need a few things. Usually being super busy and having too much on your plate is basically, from my perspective, lack of clarity, or lack of ability to say no, because I don't want to be bad or perceived bad by other people. So I'm saying yes, 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 and then I have just too much on my plate. I don't know where my limits are. And it's also maybe a sign that you lack strategy, some more longer term view. So many people struggle with having too much on their plates because step 3 is completely missing in their 4-step productivity approach. So I have my dreams, I know where I'm going, I have my projects, I'm involved in them, I have many tasks, but the step 3 is missing. And step 3 would be listing down the projects and areas I'm involved, and then seeing, okay, it's 130% of what I can handle right now. So for the next month or 2 or 3 months, these will be the 3 areas I'm focusing right now, and I'm trying to keep the others stable. That's a strategy. So I'm using my energy to focus on these areas, and these areas are not a priority now. That's what I would call a strategy. And so if you don't have that clarity, what's the most important right now, if you don't have the ability to say no, then you take too much, and basically you're overwhelmed, and that gives us a problem with being exhausted and your battery levels. So if I told you I have 14 very close friends. What would you say? You probably say, okay, yes, okay, Piotrek, yeah, I know. You have 14 friends. How many very close friends can you have? Okay, maybe someone has 14 very close friends, but in a typical case, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe a small pack of very close relationships that you trust and there's a lot of life in them. And so if people tell me I have 14 projects at the same time, are they your friends? Are they your close friends? Or are they just like people you know? So strategy and dealing with too much stuff is basically nailing down to your real friends for that period of time. All right, now different flavors of the other things about procrastination. Lack of flow and mastery. Let's talk about flow for a minute. In tasks you want to accomplish, you have a skill level and a challenge level, like 2 axes. And if skill is low and the challenge is low, there's apathy. Okay, so like some meetings at work maybe are like that, or some places you don't really want to be. But if you upgrade your skill, you're just bored, and eventually maybe you get to a point that there's a relaxation. Something is so easy for you, and the challenge is low, that you do it because it's relaxing. You're so good that you just relax by doing it. Let's now take the other axis and raise the challenge. Your skill is low, you raise the challenge, you start to worry. Can I really do it? If maybe, I don't know, this webinar, maybe I shouldn't be doing it. And then there's the point that is an anxiety. I lost my mind, I don't even know what to say because like I black out, like that would be anxiety. Then if my skill is a bit bigger, I have an arousal. Oh, maybe I can do it. Okay, my first real webinar in English. Okay, can I do it? It's an arousal, but we get to 2 most important aspects in flow. If you have quite a big skill level and challenge level is quite big, you're in this zone of control. You're controlling the output. It's like you're building your mastery. But to be in a flow state, you need to raise a challenge. And you know it because if you're playing any computer game in your history, you know that you're on level 17, you have these big monsters or a big enemy that you want to fight, and suddenly you win level 17. So that was 100% of the challenge level that you could handle, and bang, level 18 begins with such monster. So games are great with raising challenge to the point that you are in flow nearly all the time. So that's sometimes when people procrastinate, for them, it's their friend protecting them against control and boredom, which is basically also lack of any feelings, because it would be better for you to feel this arousal of this emotions that, okay, maybe if I mobilize, I'll do it. But control and boredom are like bored. So maybe that's your friend protecting you and pushing you to experience more flow. Sometimes people procrastinate because basically they are stuck in these 2 areas of control, boredom, and maybe apathy a bit. So this is maybe your friend telling you, you're ready for some next step. And basically, if some people raise the challenge, they experience less procrastination. And one of your friends here will be mindfulness. Okay, you cannot get flow when you're washing the dishes, but you can be mindful when washing the dishes, and there are numerous materials and studies based on that even if you're doing something unpleasant and you're mindful, you're fully present, then you experience much more, let's say, long-term pleasure. I don't know how it's called, but let's say I wash the dishes and I'm mindful. I can observe my breath. I can observe the water flowing. I can be focused on the sound of water or something like that. And being mindful is also another reward to the brain. And if you remember this diagram, this is what also gives the reward and raises it So it's much more pleasurable to do something that you're mindful, that gives you flow states. Suddenly you perceive it as something really that you want to do. So number 5. Number 6, lack of autonomy. It's something wrong with this picture. Just maybe that's you when you were, let's say, 2 years old. This is a kid or a child having perfect clothes. That's unusual. And if you put the winter cap on a child, maybe you were such a child, it's like, no, I don't want it. And so then you say, okay, you need it because there's cold and you'll get cold, and so please wear it. No, probably know that. So it's not about, say, being rebel or not knowing logically what's going to happen. Maybe procrastination is a part of you fighting for autonomy. This 2-3-year-old kid is not making sense about if I get cold in my head or not. It's like, do I have the right to say no? And people can get killed because of lack of autonomy. They will go and fight with the oppressive tyrant of ruling the country because freedom is so important for them. So if maybe that point is for you, you don't have that much autonomy in your life and you didn't choose tasks, and maybe part of you feel oppressed a bit and want to fight for your autonomy. Number 7, emotional goal. If you've ever been to a concert, maybe you've been to a concert, or maybe you've been to a match or a game, 30, 50,000 people can gather to listen to a concert or let's say experience a game live. Why do we do it? Because we are not robots. Okay, that's a good news. Imagine 50,000 ChatGPT instances eating popcorn and experiencing a movie or I don't know, a concert. This means we need emotions. We need emotions in our daily lives. We need emotions in our relationships, and that means we are not robots. And that's also why we need this why. So Simon Sinek wrote a book, Start with Why. If we don't see any emotional connection to what we do, there is a chance that we will procrastinate on that. It's just another mechanical thing to do. That if there are people that spend their free time and their hard-earned money on something that's aligned with their values, that touches them emotionally. You can do stuff for free. You can use the time that you will never get back just because you feel there's a greater sense in it. There's an emotional goal. Or you just see that something makes sense. So maybe this point is for you. And there are other stuff, like other issues that just, these are these flavors. If you're good with the previous 7, I experienced some cases where people procrastinated because of the person that delegated the task to them. They didn't like that person. But logically, that makes no sense because task is a task. But if your brain remembers if you like the person that delegated the task or you don't like, and that makes a difference. Maybe that was a tone. Your loved one gave you a task and delegated, and you love that person, but unconsciously you didn't like the tone. Or there's this part of you that's fighting back. And for me, one of the parts that fighting back quite often is a part that takes care about connection with myself. So this is a really interesting project, a group of people that I would probably enjoy working with. It's a nice goal, but then I feel this tension and I'm curious and I ask that part of me, okay, what's going on? And I feel, okay, I worry that this project will be so fast that you lose connection with yourself. I had that feeling that, bang, this week gone and I don't even know what I was doing. I was busy, I enjoyed my work, but I felt I lost connection with my inner me. And the other issues with trust to different parties or trust to yourself as well. So what you can do now with this, you probably, I hope, from these 8 points that something clicked for you. Okay, let's say point 2 is for me, I want to do this and that. Because remember, 20% of the effort give you 80% of the result, and probably 20% of this presentation will give you 80% results. And now the question is, which 20%? So what can you do? Guilt and shame, for whatever cost, we just transfer it or change it to curiosity. What happened? Is this typical for this types of task? Is this specific for the day or maybe for that person? If we can change if the shame is a trigger and we can stay in that state, which is unpleasant, and change it to curiosity, you're the winner. And if you put that on a light and have a group, you're even bigger winner. So guilt and shame, the first thing to combat. Improve battery health. I'm not saying about sleeping well one night. I'm thinking about, okay, if your battery health is on 30%, in my courses, I was asking people about battery health. And you know what? Over 1,000 measurements, and the average value for this battery health that people gave me was 55%. So how do I get from 55 to, let's say, 70? What do I do? Maybe that's about my nutrition, my breath work exercise. Maybe that's about the time that I go to sleep, and so on. Break down big tasks, everything bigger than 2 hours. Just divide it into smaller pieces, especially if you struggle with ADHD, then let's try to limit to 20 minutes. Number 4, clarity strategy. Okay, here are 7-9 projects I'm involved in right now. This is physical activity, blah, blah, blah. And then, okay, it's May or it's June. What do I focus on for the next 1, 2, 3, 4 months? And then what do I just keep stable? That will be some kind of strategy, very simple, but working. A bit of flow. Think about maybe sometimes raising a challenge will give you this unblock when you procrastinate. Think about more autonomy, when you can choose the team, when you can choose tasks, and have more choice. Our brain loves choice and freedom. An emotional goal, or sometimes maybe you need to ask what this task has, like what sense is in it, because maybe you don't see it and it just became a mechanical something to do. And just one more thing to mention is something that I have in a course on focus, and I just thought I would mention this because this greatly summarizes the whole thing. So 5 aspects, and these all like foundation. We go from physiology. If your physiology is not working well, it will also affect emotions and or upper layers. So physiology is to deal first. Some people that deal with depression, they take antidepressant with SSRI. Suddenly their serotonin level rises and they can say, I feel like I'm a different person. So really your physiology affects everything else. And your sleep, your nutrition, diet, everything, it's really important. Then emotions, we talked a bit about it. Then maybe some procrastination is also out of habit. It has its social aspect, and then at the end we go to tools and techniques. But for me, this order is really important to go bottom up, because if you start with tools and techniques and your physiology is, let's say, broken, you won't go far anyway. So how to get more and contact with me, and I'm go to question and answers. So because I'm just starting, please click YouTube like or give a sub. It's my first, let's say, days or activities on YouTube and others. And if you can help me spread and grow, that will be just invaluable for me, especially at that time. If you can share the recording with your friends, if you think that will help them or it will be interesting for them, that will also be a great help. I'm planning more free webinars, will be every month. The next one in June about managing energy and what I learned from people in my courses and I work with. You can always sign up to the newsletter 4stepproductivity.com, and I produced a course on focus, and I'm now working on course on task lists. I think a pre-sale will start in about 2-3 weeks, and I will share a discount on a course on focus. I will send you an email probably tomorrow. So if you want that, it's a information packed on focus specifically, but I think it will also is very closely connected with procrastination. So it's time for Q&A. If you have anything, just please write on chat. We have a few minutes left. If you want to ask about anything, just go. Tomasz, how to recognize my procrastination from mental sickness? A really good question. So I'm not a mental expert, I would say. I use a lot of techniques that I found useful. If I think I'm sick, then there is a profession to help me. That's called a doctor. And so if I think that my procrastination is kind of mental sickness, I would go to meet a doctor. And they have a lot of tools and techniques to examine. Maybe I struggle with ADHD, or maybe I have some other issues that are much deeper, let's say, real mental issues. Or maybe I struggle with depression or some kind of anxiety. Yeah, I would go to the doctor and check it. That's what normally people do. Self-diagnosis don't always work, especially that, your inner friend wants to protect you from perceiving the painful truth. And so always another human being is that want to help you and is there to help you. I think that would be my first guess to go. But then there's something more to it that's just on my mind that I can't really name yet. I think basically we're lacking empathy. It's 21st century. We see these beautiful Instagram pictures of perfect life of other people. And then the more you scroll it, the more you see it, the more you compare to that, and you feel worse. And because you want to medicate that, you look even more and more. So if you cut on social media or anything that let you compare to others and engage in activities that are here and now, more mindful. I know you do music, so I cut on comparing to other people, but I deal more with music. Does it help me feel better? Or maybe I unblock something. So this lack of empathy, that's why also I began with guilt and shame, because not many people talk about it, but that can be a huge blocker to anything. And also it can sometimes be perceived as a mental issue, because it can be so strong that you don't even see the real world, because something in you is protecting you against so much pain. I really experienced that in my life and in life of other people, that just I couldn't see the things that were obvious. So Tomasz, I hope that answers the question. Piotr, excellent presentation. Thank you, Piotr. Thank you. How do you change shame to curiosity? So that's hard. There are multiple ways to do that. The first thing is, there are different types of therapies. One would focus on healing the past, and the other types would focus on the future and where you want to go. And for me, these are two aspects. Shame always has a root. Maybe we were born in a shame culture. Maybe there was a lot of shame in your family, if let's say that's your case. So one of the approaches would be to become this small Piotr again, and remember those situations that I felt shame because I did something. So I did something that wasn't good, but somehow what I do became a part of my identity. It's who I am. And unconsciously now I feel this is a part of me that's, it's like my hand. I cannot just untie it from my body, and it seems like it's a part of me. And one part of the healing is going back to those moments and saying, those people wanted to do something good for you, to protect you from pain. and they didn't know they are causing pain. And so you're healing that situations that induce this shame. So that's one, let's say, part of the picture. The other is focusing on what you want. And for behaviors, I would work on a habit. Shame is, if I talk about habits all the time, shame is a beautiful trigger. First, training mindfulness, any training mindfulness, even 10 minutes with Headspace daily, give you this space that, okay, you feel something, and you don't need to act immediately, because normally we are like on autopilot. I feel something, I do. And then when you meditate, you build that space between, okay, I feel it, and it's like a cloud. Okay, I can observe it. I don't need to let's just yell and, move faster. So the meditation builds that space, and then you have a habit. Okay, I feel shame. Let's observe it. Like, what do I feel it in my body? What do I do? And then this meditation practice gives you more space to turn into curiosity. And the third thing would be shame hates group setting. We all struggle with procrastination to some extent, and even talking about it and putting it to the light gives it less and less power on our lives. So I think that's I think my answer. That's something from top of my mind right now. Ola, could it be that people struggle with most of the reason of procrastination that you talked about at the same time feels very overwhelming? Yes, it's quite possible, and I even have that in my life. But then it's what we do with the other part of productivity. There is a 20% of the issues that causes 80% of results. So you don't think about everything, you have a strategy. So, okay, I think shame and battery part were for me. There's not much I could, let's say, do about others at this point. Let's join a group and talk about it, and maybe let's sleep well for the next few days. And at the same time, I maybe divide big tasks into smaller pieces and see how it works. And if you have that curiosity and you're experimenting, you don't need to fix everything at the same time. I think that's not even nice and funny, and you don't enjoy it, because in your life, when you feel this movement that you fix one thing and it gives you more energy, and then you have another thing, we actually love it. That's why we love movies about Rocky or other stuff, that he struggled, he nearly died, he was nearly defeated, and suddenly bang, he did it. We love such stories. We hate these boring stories that one day he just became rich, famous, and beautiful. It's like, nah. So I believe there is some combination of all these procrastination sources. I think there are more. I mentioned just 8 of them. But there's 1 or 2 that are for now. And let's just deal with what we have in front of our eyes and don't be overwhelmed by everything. So I hope all that gives some hope. And Tomasz, switching to strategy thinking, focusing, cutting off distractions feels like a big task, and I struggle with that. How to start it, how to chunk it, how to make it a habit, and I appreciate any tips. So with strategy, I would begin with a sheet of paper and writing down all the projects and all the areas of your life that you're involved in. So if you're a parent, okay, I'm a dad. I'm in this musical project. I have this at work, and I have that, and I do physical exercising. You can write it down. You can form a mind map. You just dump your brain. Everything that you would call a project or area of your life. There may be usually for people this between 5 and 15, I would say. And when you have all that written down, you just keep it somewhere that you see it. And then, let's say you sit on it for half an hour next week and see, okay, if I could choose only 3 areas that I work on for the next 1 to 2 or 3 months, while keeping others at the same level, which 3 I would choose? And if you feel that this investment of time really pushed these things forward, you start to feel like, where is the balance in your life? And suddenly, for many people, that's the moment that they cut down many other projects, or they say, I don't need more in that area of life. Actually, I'm pretty happy. I maybe cut 60% of it, because what I do is enough. And then I heavily invest in those things. So that will be, because the step 3 is like in between 1, 2, and 4. So when you have this list or mind map of your activities in life, projects and areas, and you have your values, passion, talents on another sheet of paper, step 3 is from combination of these two. So let's say you did Gallup, Strengthsfinder, and a few other tests. People gave you feedback about your talents, and you feel your passion, you know them. Suddenly, okay, here are my areas of my life. Here are my passion, talents, and my like bigger vision. And on a conjunction, let's say the cross section of these two is your strategy. I hope that's an answer. Ola, yes, thank you. All right, 1 hour and 3 minutes. No more questions for now. Thank you for spending that hour with me. I hope that was useful, practical. I'll be grateful if you can help me, let's say, spread the news and get even more people registered for the next webinar in June about energy management. Yeah, one more question. Migo Sore, does Strengthsfinder really help you choose your professional path? Yes. I plan a webinar on that, on talents. Actually, that was a life changer for me, because I found that on top of my Gallup Strengthsfinder is a developer. I was a software developer, but then I realized I'm also a people developer. That was back in 2007. And the next 5 years I spent getting more and more training in area of dealing with people. And eventually I left the software engineering roles. And this is what I do, basically. So for me, that was a game changer, a life changer. And this is actually a part of my step 4, the talents that I reflect on. I have also some other personality assessments and feedbacks that form, let's say, my 1-pager with my step 4. But yeah, Gallup Strengthsfinder was like a total, blew my mind. Margot, great presentation, thanks. Marcin and Yaklovdia, fantastic. I love your holistic and deeper approach. Thank you. Thank you. So that was an honor. Have a great evening or a day, whatever you have there. I wish you a human-centered productivity, that you don't pity on yourself, but you're really empathetic. You're a human being with emotions, with complex personality. There's a lot of strange stuff going on inside. And just be good to yourself, but don't be a victim. So, thank you. Have a great day. And done.